Welcome to Control4 Driver Development Essentials. My name is Peter Casenza. This is the first video of Control4's T-Series Driver Development Training Modules. The T stands for Template, and in this set of training videos, named T101, we will introduce to you the concept of a driver development template. A driver development template is essentially a Control4 device driver. However, the contents of the driver resemble more of a framework. Your job, as a driver developer, is to fill in the framework that we have provided to produce a finished device driver. After watching all of the modules in the T101 series, you should feel comfortable in understanding the purpose and scope of driver templates and how you can leverage them in creating your own device drivers. After the T101 series, you'll want to move into the T201 training modules. These videos are template specific in that they provide an overview for a specific driver template. For example, the T201 Module 1 video is titled The Camera Driver Template. That video focuses exclusively on the nuances in using the IP camera driver template. It is Control4's intention to provide a video to correspond with all of its supported proxies. In this video series, we will be using two development environments with which you should be familiar: Driver Editor and Notepad++. Control4 uses Driver Editor as the primary vehicle for delivering its driver templates. The Driver Editor environment also provides a useful graphical representation of driver code, so we'll spend a fair amount of time in it to review the various components that make up a driver template. There will also be occasions where we leave the Driver Editor environment and review driver code in Notepad++. This will be especially useful when we need to compare code or demonstrate Lua exercises. Before we get much further, it is important to clearly state the intended audience for this video series. In order to make the most of the information offered here, we recommend watching all previous Driver Development Essential videos. This includes the 201 Interoperability Overview, the 301 series, where we detail the Control4 system and driver interaction, as well as the 401 series, where we examine the major components of a Control4 device driver and Lua programming concepts. If you have not had the opportunity to review this training content, we feel strongly that you should. The content we'll be covering here assumes this level of familiarity with Control4 and Control4 drivers. Additionally, we would like to recommend an adjunct resource that we feel to be useful in driver development. That is the book, Beginning Lua Programming by Young and Brown. Specifically, chapters 2 through 6 are particularly useful to driver developers. Now, let's get started by taking a look at a generic driver template in the Driver Editor environment. This video assumes that you will run Driver Editor in single driver mode, as opposed to database mode. We recommend this as the examples shown in this video are demonstrated in the single driver mode. When we open the Driver Editor environment and select File, New, we are presented with all of the currently available driver templates. To start, we'll select the base driver template. The base driver template is the simplest of all the templates offered by Control4. It will be a good template to review initially to gain some familiarity with the various components that make up a driver template. As we walk through the base driver template, we are going to switch back and forth between Driver Editor and Notepad++. Driver Editor is supported with a detailed help system, so don't be too concerned about the actual usage of the screens we'll be reviewing. The purpose here is to show you the relationship between the content displayed in the driver editor UI and the actual code that makes up a driver template. The first part of the template presented is found under the Main tab. Here, we can enter all of the high-level device and driver information. Driver Editor provides a UI for this information to be entered or modified. If we open the base driver template in Notepad++, we can see the entire schema. The next tab we see on the toolbar is the Proxies tab. Here, we can designate the proxy or proxies that our driver will need. Again, we can also see where this schema resides in the base driver template code. This is followed by the Capabilities tab. Similar to the Proxy tab, here our driver's capabilities can be added, deleted, or modified. The Configuration tab in Driver Editor provides numerous power, communication, and system level settings. If we look at the config code block in our driver, we'll see the same settings. Hopefully, you're seeing the one-to-one relationship between the content that is displayed in the driver editor and what's found in the base driver template. It's useful to think of driver editor as a UI representation of the template code. It provides you with an easy way to view the code as well as modify it. Our next tab, Codes and Commands, departs from this model. The Codes Command tab pulls in the template schema and displays it in its own editing environment. By exposing the more complex template components through the driver editor environment, we can easily see the sections of the template code that you'll be editing during your development work. For example, the template begins with empty Lua tables for handling various types of driver commands, notifications, and other driver components. You'll note that all of the documentation in the template is green. Next, you can see where the template supports a table for all of the driver initialization and removal functions. Next, in the Common Driver Code section, we can see where the template has an allocated area for handling property value changes. This is followed by a section of template where all of the execute commands are entered. These are primarily the commands that will come from Composer Pro programming to our driver. The next area is devoted to all of the functions that will be sent using the Receive from Proxy API. These are the commands that will come from the proxy to the protocol. This is followed by our notification code, which will be populated with all of the responses coming from the device or protocol layer to the proxy. The next section of the template contains all of the driver initialization and removal code. This code will be used to populate the tables we saw previously in our driver. Finally, our base driver template ends with two important code sections. Here, we can see areas to support the debug library for our driver, as well as a section devoted to timer code. That was a rather high-level tour of the base driver template. Hopefully, you're beginning to see how creating a driver based on an approved Control4 template will be easier than starting with a pre-populated driver, and certainly easier than starting from scratch. Now, let's take a tour of another template. This time, we'll review the driver template offered to create drivers for IP cameras. Let's go back to our driver editor toolbar and select File, New. This time, we'll load the camera template. As you can see on the Main tab, the name and model fields are populated with Camera Template. If we look at the Proxies tab, we'll find that the template designates the correct proxy for our driver. The Capabilities tab also contains camera-specific functions that are supported by the Control4 camera proxy. We can add capabilities from here, as well as remove or edit existing ones. If you look at the Configuration tab, you'll see that most of the elements are not applicable to IP camera support. Therefore, it will remain largely unchanged. The Connections tab now has a camera proxy connection, and if we hover over the camera line with our mouse, Driver Editor will display the connection code block from our driver template. The Codes and Commands tab is where we can really see the uniqueness of the camera driver template. It begins similarly to the base driver template with ready-to-populate Lua tables to handle things such as commands, notifications, and actions. And once again, these are followed by empty tables provided to handle our driver initialization and removal code. Just below this, we can see template documentation that designates the next area of the template for the camera proxy code. Here we find that the camera proxy commands have been included in the template. Following all of the proxy commands, we can see that several helper functions have been included in this template. One is provided to help with handling Boolean values, and the other is used to handle basic and digest authentication types. As in our base driver template, we can see a section of common driver code. This area will handle all of the property changes for our camera driver. This is followed by an execute command section to handle the camera commands that come from Composer Pro programming or Navigator devices. Here is our receive from proxy area. It will handle all of the commands sent from the camera proxy to the camera. It is followed by the notification area, which will handle all of the notifications from the camera to the proxy. All of our camera driver initialization and removal functionality will be handled in the next section of the template. It is followed by the debug code and timer code. The final section of the camera template is the Q code area. This is provided to marshal commands that will be sent to the camera. Queue functions are already provided to place commands into the queue, review commands currently in the queue, remove commands from the queue, as well as clear the queue. The camera driver template represents a C4I file that has been delivered in a manner in which you, as a driver developer, should be able to populate with your camera's functionality and be well on your way to having a fully functional camera driver. Hopefully you've noticed a progression in template features from the base driver template to the camera driver template. We've certainly covered a lot of ground in this video, and we've done it at a high level. In our next video, we'll show you examples of populating each of the template sections we've reviewed. We'll continue to use the camera driver template, and when we're done, we'll have a functioning camera driver.